Great.
Thank you for joining us today.
No, thank you for inviting me. And I want to just take a moment and appreciate everyone who's in the group. I see great people who are expert in their fields and are doing amazing work that I've gotten to know firsthand. So thank you for inviting me, and I recognize the expertise in the room as well. So feel free to jump in with ideas and comments as we go through the presentation as well. I want to say two things before we start. First is that I've been having technology issues, so I had to recreate the slides that I had for you guys, prepared for you guys. I kept on my previous computer. So you will see that I will go through very quickly some of the slides that are very technical in nature, but I will focus more on the outreach slides that I prepared for you guys. And also, as very rudimentary tool, I will go back to my notes on my notebook to go over some of the things that I wanted to highlight that I couldn't put in the slides for you guys. However, I will make sure as soon as I get back my computer to curate the slides for you all and make sure that those are available if you are interested. So I'll keep the very technical slides if you're interested in having that information as well. And then the new version of the PowerPoint will also have the slides that are hidden in my other computer that will not turn on. Thank you for again the opportunity, and bear in mind that that will be made available to you all. So I titled this presentation "New Changes to the Child Tax Credit and the Earned Income Tax Credit Are Lifting Latino Families Out of Poverty." Let's just go very quickly over the technical matters. And my objective here is to convince you how powerful and strong these policies are, and also provide with you maybe the sense of urgency that we need to reach all the Latino and immigrant families before the filing deadline so that they can take advantage of this benefit. So I want to just, a few points on the Earned Income Tax Credit. This is a program that's been around for a long time, since 1975. It has had different designs over time, but what makes it very cool is that it's a refundable tax credit. So you do not need to owe taxes in order to get the benefit. And then the eligibility of it has changed also over time, but it's mostly dependent on factors like your ID requirements, presence of qualifying children, age requirements, and so on. Can we go to the next slide? Great, so key improvements in the EITC through the American Rescue Plan. I highlighted three here. Now, taxpayers without dependent children can claim the EITC even though they are between 19 and 24 years old and over 65. And also that the maximum credit for those workers who have no dependents basically tripled thanks to the American Rescue Plan. And a very important feature also in the American Rescue Plan is that for taxpayers in Puerto Rico, although they would not have access to the federal EITC, the federal government has invested $600 million in a matching grant to enhance the local Puerto Rico EITC. So now taxpayers and workers in Puerto Rico have access to a similar EITC in terms of the maximum credits available to them. Another important aspect of EITCs is that over the last couple of years, there have been recent changes at the state level where EITC has been expanded for workers with an ITIN number. And I highlight here a couple of the states that have been doing this. California and Colorado led the pack, but recently Maryland, New Mexico, Oregon, and Washington State also have an EITC that offers eligibility for workers with ITIN. We go to the next slide. There's common agreement that the EITC is a good policy. Many states have a version of an EITC, and you see this map here with some of the states that have an EITC. We can go to the next one. And we can skip this one too. That table is essentially offers the parameters for the EITC. I think this graph explains it better. If you take a look at the very bottom line, that's the change in policy in terms of the max credit. It essentially tripled and expanded for folks who have no dependent children. Let's go on to the next one. Right, and then here, the CTC is a little bit younger in terms of when it was created. It was enacted in 1997. And over time, it has grown into the most expensive version of it, which is what we saw last year, last tax year with the American Rescue Plan. An important feature that I think I want us to understand is that the American Rescue Plan made it so that workers or families didn't have to earn any income to claim the credit. And that's really important. That's the #1 driver for equity of this policy. It makes it so that folks who are living in poverty or who are with very low wages get access to the maximum credit. And that's a design that it was brought on because of the pandemic, but many researchers have argued before that it's the optimal design of this type of tax credit. And obviously the enhancements in terms of the maximum credits as well is really important. We can go to the next one. Right, so the improvements, this is something that we all know. So it included children who are 17 years old. It increased the credit for up to $3,600. It's fully refundable. And last year, for the last semester at least, it offered taxpayers that credit in monthly installments. And what's really important for the families in Puerto Rico is that now families with 1 and 2 children can claim the credit, whereas before only families with 3 children or more were eligible for the credit. This means, just for context, only about 11% of all families with children in Puerto Rico had 3 or more children. Even less than those apply for the CTC before, very few. So now all of the families have access to it. So there's incredible amount of resources that are coming directly to families in Puerto Rico. And a lot of them are just interacting with the IRS for the first time, which makes the challenge even greater. And I think I have more slides that talk a little bit more on that in detail if we go to the next one. Okay, so this is, again, another graph for you to know the difference in policy. If you take a look at the gray line, that line describes the prior law for the CTC. It offered less money for those who were earning less up until a certain point. But thanks to that advance, the American Rescue Plan, we have higher credits, the maximum credits offered to those at the very low income level. You can go to the next one. Great, so as I shared, researchers have found that this design of the CTC reduces poverty, it improves health and developmental outcomes among children. It improves academic achievement even for kids. The current design, recent data that we have for last semester, it's getting the job done, right? It greatly supports Latino and Black children in families with the lowest incomes, with a poverty reduction of 26% among Black and 30% among Latino children. It reduces monthly child poverty from 15.9 to 12.2%. And that's a lot of people, folks. About 3.8 million kids were kept from poverty thanks to the advanced monthly payments at its highest point. Then families have also been able to spend that money in foods and other basic needs. And research from the Academy of Sciences showed that the value to society that flows from these payments and these credits is approximately 8 times the annual cost of that investment. So this is good policy, and I'm sure all of us here agree that this design is optimal and it provides relief for families. It also supports our economy. We go to the next one. Here again for Puerto Rico, this is what I wanted to show you. A study found that 97% of families with children in Puerto Rico are now eligible. That's a 9 and a 7. Almost all families with children are eligible for the CTC in Puerto Rico. At 100% take-up rate, that is estimated to be about $1.78 billion for the Puerto Rican economy. When we look at the EITC with the enhancements thanks to the American Rescue Plan, and that enhancement was made permanent. So Puerto Rico has this matching block grant, not only for this year, but it'll still have that same block grant for the following years. That means that about 466,000 households in Puerto Rico will have access to the EITC at 100% take-up rate. That nearly doubles what the number of families that were eligible for it before. And when fully executed, it is estimated that the EITC will bring to the Puerto Rican economy about $800 million too. So in combination, that's about $2.5 billion. That's a lot of money for the Puerto Rican economy. And just to give you context, the potential impacts that we will see as we compile the data over time is that, previous to this, about 6 out of 10 kids in Puerto Rico lived under the federal poverty line. Out of the 10 kids that you meet in Puerto Rico, 6 of them will be poor. It's egregious. It's one of the largest poverty rates in our country, in our jurisdiction. I think the state with the highest poverty rate is usually between New Mexico and Mississippi. And in the case of Puerto Rico, the percentage of kids living in poverty is almost double of the poorest state on the mainland. So it's pervasive, and and I'm excited to see how this policy can really change that. When we look at poverty as a whole for everyone in Puerto Rico, about 44% of all Puerto Ricans live under the federal poverty line, which again, compared to the poorest state, it's almost double that amount. Go to the next one. Great. So the reason why this is challenging is that our tax system, when it pertains to the Latino community, has always been, let's say, not generous enough with the Latino communities. So prior to the American Rescue Plan, about 1 in 3 children in the US were excluded from the full child tax credit. When you look at how that looks like for Black and Latino children, that's 1 out of 2. And obviously, if you look deeper for single parent households or for folks who live in rural areas, the ratio is also varies, but it tends to be less in their favor. So the tax system delivered unequally to everyone who offered to contribute to it in many ways. If we go to the next slide, because of that disconnection, and also because of how in culturally and policy context, immigrant families have been excluded from the safety net programs. We look at the public charge rule. It provided a shielding effect that prevents many families that are eligible to enroll in many benefit programs. And also, when you go into the details, it's so confusing, the varying eligibility for ITIN holders, for COVID relief packages. So you may get some of the stimulus payments, maybe not the first 2, but maybe the third one. You may get the CTC, but not the EITC if you have an ITIN. And this stratification of immigrants by eligibility, by rules, is some sort of structural discrimination that it overcomplicates the system. It creates unnecessary processes at the IRS level. And even at the family and individual level, it also prohibits many families to feel comfortable or to trust that they are eligible for these credits. Also, when we look at the outreach, there's a limited English proficient immigrants that, the outreach has just been poor in that area. When you look at the rollout of the website for the CTC, and the EITC, it first came in English. About a month and a half later, it came in Spanish and then in other languages. And that's a problem because you'll have, in the absence of clear communications in language communications, families then create their own rules and interpret the rules in different ways. So the CTC is one of the few tax credits that help support children in mixed immigration status families that don't have an SSN. And immigrant parents are less aware of the CTC than US-born parents. That's just true. So those are some of the main challenges, not only in the policy design that has historically excluded immigrant and immigrant children, also in the outreach. It has been very difficult to just connect with every eligible taxpayer. We go to the next one. Data out of a survey conducted in October showed that Latinos were less likely to claim the CTC on their tax return. And also the Latinos were less likely to report receiving the monthly CTC payments when compared to their counterparts. Also, on issues in the IRS, there's a backlog in processing tax returns. There's a backlog in processing W-7s, which is the application for ITINs. And all of that creates even further confusion. I'm sure if you interact with immigrant families regularly, if one of them filed for an ITIN last year and they haven't received anything, your recommendation should be not to tell them to file it again for an ITIN, because that'll further complicate the whole process. But at the end of the day, it's just that this backlog is further complicating our work as intermediaries between the tax system and the families and how we communicate with them. So those are just high level, some of the challenges that we found as we conduct our own campaign, our own outreach. We go to the next one. Great, so I want to stop here and spend time going through some of the resources that we've been able to pull together. I will make sure that hopefully we connect with Jane and Roxy for you all to get the links that we have here. So a step back, once we went into this campaign last semester, we quickly identified that we needed resources in Spanish. So most of our, if not all of the resources that we have here are both in English and Spanish, but mostly all the videos and all the navigator trainings are in Spanish, because we wanted to make sure that both service providers had the resources in Spanish so that they could connect with the families, but also families themselves can learn more about the CTC in Spanish. So we created, as part of our Esperanza Hope for All campaign, a child tax credit focused campaign that had both an air game and a ground game, where we were able to connect with radio stations, digital media, and have essentially just communicate broadly what the CTC is, what the policy is. But obviously, you don't capture everyone through an air game campaign. So we had to do also a ground level campaign. And our areas of focus for the many reasons that I explained before was mostly Puerto Rico, where 97% of all families with children will be eligible for the credit. So what we compiled here, you will find in our website information, general information and updated information on the CTC. You can also go back and see all of the past navigator training. So we call navigators, you probably heard this a million times before. It's this group of people that are maybe not tax law experts, but know how to find answers and know how to connect with resources that help potential eligible families to connect with the tax prep services that are eligible and available for them. So that's essentially the role of a navigator. So anyone from your neighbor to a staff person in an organization can become this sort of navigator. And we provide and go over the resources that are available to folks who want to become that that leader or that connector between families and the tax prep services. We also been able to, as we go through this process, collect CTC stories. And I think this has been one of the most impactful things of our work, is that there's one thing to talk about percentages and talk about the impact of this policy on a research level, and it's another thing just to see it happen and communicated through a family or through parents who are caring for kids or through the kids themselves. So we've been able to collect some stories and put them into blogs. That also helps us connect with media and connect with policymakers who are interested in furthering this work. So it's a good tool if you are into explaining the credits or want to make sure that you offer to a family an experienced family that has gone through the process and they feel more comfortable if they see someone else go through it first. We have collected some of those stories in our webpage. We also, in collaboration with other partners, created a resource as to how to apply for an ITIN, which is an important step for those who are not eligible to have a social security number. And it goes through the process of how to do that. And we've also curated some resources for the EITC as well, given that that's a policy that does not include workers with an ITIN number. But some Latino families could benefit from the EITC and may not be aware of it. So we created a blog post for that as well. We go to the next one. We're not alone in this. And I call this group of people like, we call it partners, but these are like family right now. We see each other almost every single week, and we collaborate in many things through email, through phone calls, through coalition work. So some of the partners here that I've highlighted have also created resources for you all in Spanish and in English and in other languages that you can download and use appropriately. Both Center of Budget, Code for America, and also the Coalition on Human Needs and the Partnership for America's Children have really good resources. Some of them really tailored to, for example, service providers in the case of the Coalition on Human Needs and the Partnership, toolkits for school districts, which is proven to be a really effective way to connect with families, with children, and also toolkits for government agencies that might have access to administrative data where they can text people or send an email to people and through that communication make people aware of the benefit of the CTC, and that's proven to be very useful. If we go to the next slide, it might also be important for people to see it from an official government website. So we've been able to support the White House in creating a webpage called childtaxcredit.gov. And also the IRS has this information available also. The thing with the IRS website is that it's very technical and sometimes complicated to navigate through the whole text. But they do have a dedicated portal for the child tax credit. And also we managed to partner with the governor of Puerto Rico and supported them in creating their own website that talks about the EITC and the CTC as well. And we go to the next slide. When we look at the case of Puerto Rico in particular, there's a campaign going around. It's called Reclama tu Dinero, which translates roughly to claim your money. And this campaign is everywhere, folks. We've been able to like put it in not only digital media, but newspapers. Just yesterday, folks went into, we call it llenaton, which I'm trying to roughly translate in my head to, I guess, a filing marathon, I guess. So we go to a community and we get people out, mostly in rural communities, and people go out and get supported by volunteers, and some VITA volunteers come in also and support families in filing their taxes in Puerto Rico. I got a text literally this morning. They managed to connect with a mother who was eligible to $16,000 through the EITC and the CTC. And that's just, I just think that's just amazing that our partners in Puerto Rico are able to connect with rural families and really support them in that way. And this is, do want to make sure that I mention their names. The partners in Puerto Rico who are running and taking essentially the lead on this work are the Hispanic Federation, the Youth Development Institute, and Espacios Abiertos. They collaborated together to create also this resource for families. And I'm just really proud of their work. And you can also see their websites. They have a joint campaign website called reclamatudineropr.com, but they also have individual websites for the CTC and the EITC with calculators, locator tools to find Avida, and all kinds of stuff. If we go to the next one. Great. We have also an upcoming navigator training next week, where we will go over some of the resources that we have here that I shared with you all, but also we want to explain how to apply for an ITIN process in detail. And we also want to explain how to use the Code for America resource to find a VITA site near you. And we also have some some fact sheets around how to find a tax preparer, which is very important. It's a skill, it's not easy, how to find a tax preparer that will not take advantage of you if you're new to the tax system. So all of that will be shared in the next navigator training, which is April 5th. We go to the next slide. I think we're almost done. Right, so this is me being ambitious, but the policy design that we want to support in the future for EITC and CTC is this. Essentially, we want to have expanded credits like we had before, 3,000 for 6 to 17 and 3,600 for kids under 6 years old. And we want an EITC for childless workers that, you know, it's proportionate to the growth in inflation, but also doesn't go back to the $500. You know, it stays up into $1,500 threshold. We want to have the advanced monthly payments extended as an option for taxpayers who need the money now rather than a lump sum during tax season. We want to make sure that they're fully refundable. We want to ensure also that the next version of this credit restores eligibility for kids with ITIN. Prior to 2017, under the Trump tax cuts, kids with an ITIN could get the CTC. And it just baffles me that at a time where a lot of Latino workers have helped us, you know, keep food on our table during the pandemic and essentially put their lives at risk, that their kids with an ITIN wouldn't get access to this benefit. So we're fighting constantly in Congress to ensure the kids with ITIN get eligibility restored for the CTC. We want an EITC that includes taxpayers with an ITIN number. And we also want to make sure that young adults and seniors are permanently included in the EITC as well. And then we go to the next one. In terms of implementation, what we want to see from the IRS is a strategy that includes a culturally competent outreach method. So you lead with equity instead of adding it on as a tag-along or a sticker to your outreach. So it should be that the Spanish version comes out at the same time as the English version of your materials. That you partner with community-based organizations that hold the social capital in their communities so that you are able to reach them appropriately. That you're educating taxpayers and ensuring that they understand rather than helping them file and just have them be always subjected to being at risk of the predatory tax preparers, and so on. I could continue what a culturally competent outreach strategy should look like. We also want to have simplified filing tools for those folks who don't need to go through a full tax return. A simplified tool can make a difference. We need more resources for VITA sites and LITCs and CAAs as well. And we also need to reduce administrative burden and streamline the complicated loopholes for ITIN filers. I think it'll make our tax system stronger. It'll make our economy stronger as well. If we go to the next one, I think I'm almost at the end. right? Our commitment is to, which I hope is your commitment too, is to increase the take-up rate for the CTC and the EITC for Latinos. And this is a fight that we'll have until the filing deadline of April 18th, but also even further as families who may be eligible for the CTC could still claim the CTC after the deadline and get the full refund. And we also want to advocate for the tax credit policies that we just discussed that support hardworking Latin families and ensure that, you know, they get not more, just the same as everyone else. And I think that's the end. I just want to make sure, because I know I've talked too much. I want to make sure I go over some of the notes that I took they were in the original presentation and I couldn't make them fit into the presentation that I share with you all now. But I wanted just to verbally just say that to you all before I jump into questions. And it's just 3 things that I found very, very relevant as we get closer to the filing deadline. One is that a lot of families are still confused around the amount of their refund. If you got advance payments last semester, you got half of your refund. And the other half you will get when you file taxes this year. So making sure that as you work with immigrant families, you explain that to them. If they were expected to get $3,600 because they were claiming a kid under 6 years old, but they got the advance payments. You need to let them know that they're getting half of their credit. So they're not getting less they're not getting robbed of their money. They just got part of it in advance, and these other part they're getting now. And I think that's important to communicate with people as you interact with them, making sure that if they got the advance payments, they understand what is happening. The other part that we also found and encountered, this is for taxpayers in Puerto Rico, is that Puerto Rico filers can have a special 1040 form, which is called the 1040 PR. And they could also use a 1040 SS. But some tax prep services in Puerto Rico, private tax prep services, got ahead of the curve and used a regular 1040 to file for residence in Puerto Rico. And that automatically puts all of the families that use a 1040 instead of a 1040 PR on a different filter in the IRS. And thousands of families have gotten a letter to verify their ID, their identification, without the need to do so. So we found that, and they've been able to go through with the payments for those who are not required to go through the ID verification process. But if you encounter a family in Puerto Rico who has gotten the letter, please let them know that if they could wait a couple of more days, if they get the refund, they don't need to do anything with ID Me. But if they get instead another letter in Spanish, because the first letters they sent them in English, because again, equity, we can talk about that later. And people got a letter in English and they just didn't know what to do with it. But if they get a second letter in Spanish, that means that they do have to go through the ID Me verification process. And that's important to communicate if someone reaches out from Puerto Rico with a question on that. And the last thing I'll say is about ITIN filers. It's important to note that folks with an ITIN cannot retroactively claim the CTC. So it's important for them, if they haven't gone through the process of applying for an ITIN or renewing their ITIN, they should do so as quickly as possible before the filing deadline. Because I'm still getting clarity on that rule, but I fear that if they submit their paperwork and that gets into the IRS after the filing deadline, that they would then not be able to claim their credits that they're eligible for now. So it's game 7 of the playoffs. It's a full court press, and it's win or go home, right? So we need to do this and bring our best foot forward and ensure that we're giving it 100% of our effort to make sure that everyone who's eligible gets this credit. And this goes from individual responsibility. Like I usually every week post or reshare or post stuff on my social media and encourage my friends to also do the same. But also institutionally, just to make sure that we are using all of our channels to connect with families that are in need of the service. And I understand some of you are invited sites, you're probably like at capacity right now in terms of appointments. I think it's important that even though you don't have many appointments available, you let people know of free services that people can use themselves, like my free taxes from United Worldwide. And they could also get online services as well.